Good evening to you once again. Miss Universe says she has felt the spirit of Nelson Mandela through the various displays of humanity in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. A New York-based Zozibini Tunzi spoke exclusively to SABC News ahead of Nelson Mandela International Day this Saturday, July the 18th. And like Madiba, she has confronted issues of race and racism, grappled with the rising wave of inequality and gender-based violence even since winning the crown last December.
Zozibini Tunzi, thank you so much for always making time for SABC News. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for having me once again.
You know, we're a few days out from Nelson Mandela International Day at a time of much anxiety, suffering, loss, a time where a chasm of inequity has shown up in a really big way in so many people's lives. How are you processing the meaning of Nelson Mandela at this very interesting time in your life?
Yeah, sure. It is a very interesting time, this whole pandemic, and especially being far from home and being in New York. I think just the spirit of Madiba I've felt during this time, a spirit of giving, a spirit of togetherness is something that I've appreciated during this time. You know, when we speak of humanity, a lot of people have said we don't have humanity anymore. It's died a long time ago. And I think during this time, we were all able to see that actually, people still care. People are still able to be there for each other, during tough times. And so I think I've felt his spirit come through a lot during this time. And that's how I'm relating it, to Madiba and his life.
You were all of 7 months old when Nelson Mandela took the oath of office in April 1994 to become South Africa's first black president. So unlike so many who grew up in a period where Madiba was incarcerated, was released, and so on, you only knew him as a free man. So I wonder how your experience of Madiba as a free man only has shaped kind of the trajectory that you've been able to take in your life.
Yeah, I think because I live through books a lot, I kind of got a glimpse of who he was before just reading, about not only him, but so many South African greats and so many, heroes who fought for us during that time, and seeing him as a free man and knowing that he is the first black, knowing that he's the first black South African president, I think for me validated so much of my dreams and validated so much of things that I can accomplish, in life, knowing that this is something that he went through for so many years. And now finally seeing that it's possible to have something like that happen. It was wonderful, seeing him as a free man, especially reading about him and hearing about stories from our parents and our grandparents. And it relates to my life in that way, knowing that it's possible for me to, as a young black South African woman, to be able to achieve so much more, coming from where I come from.
I'm often reminded of the statement you made just ahead of being crowned Miss Universe in November last year. Quote, "I grew up in a world where a woman who looks like me with my kind of skin and my kind of hair was never considered beautiful. I think it is time that stops today. I want children to look at me and see my face, and I want to see their faces reflected in mine." A statement not just about your roots, right, both literally or figuratively, but a commentary on society that is still in 2019, in 2020, preoccupied with race. How have issues of race or racism confronted you since winning the crown last year, particularly now living in the United States?
Oh, I can say
that's an interesting one, right?
It is. It is a very interesting one. It has impacted me in a lot of ways, in both positive and in both negative. And I think on the positive end, just getting so many messages from young Black women, from young Black girls and their parents, sort of sending me DMs and texting me and sending me videos on a daily, to say thank you for saying what you said, and thank you for being so authentic and being yourself. Because you were that person, you gave me permission, to be comfortable in my Blackness and everything that I stand for. And so I think that's been the most beautiful part of my journey. And of course, the ugly side of it as well, of people still not being accepting of my skin. And the person that I am. People are very uncomfortable of change, and because there have been a very few Miss Universes who are Black, and absolutely no Miss Universe with my kind of hair for sure. And so it was very uncomfortable for a lot of people, and it still is. And so when they become uncomfortable, they become, very aggressive and vocal in their words, I'll see it once in a while in my DMs. Somebody will comment about my Blackness or about me being a monkey or an ugly Black Miss South Africa. So, it's definitely things that I've felt since I won Miss Universe. It's been difficult for other people to accept it, but I'm glad that I won, and I'm glad that I could be the person who is, this vessel of change. Because I'm here, it means other young girls can be here as well. So I'm more than happy to take the shots.
The last couple of months in the United States have been a very difficult time, and not just the COVID-19 pandemic and some of the missteps you're seeing from this administration, but also the Black Lives Matter movement in the aftermath of the killing, the brutal killing of George Floyd at the hands of former police officers. I wonder what that transition, being a transplant from a country like South Africa with its very particular history, and the similarities that you see in a much older democracy like the United States. I wonder how that has confronted you.
Yeah, you can definitely see the parallels. You can definitely see it when, they were marching on the streets and when all of this was happening. It was very reminiscent, of a South Africa that people have known before, during the apartheid times. And, sometimes even still today, South Africans are going through the same thing that Americans have been going through the Black Lives Matter movement. And so for me, it was just, that knowledge of knowing that, all around the world, systems and governments need to do better. I feel like the world has been built on the back of Black people, of people of color. And systems were built that way in the past, and they're still that way. And so I think it's time that we started dismantling these, systems that are built on racism. Start dismantling them and build new ones that are more inclusive and that are more accepting of everybody else. And so it's been such a tough time, but I'm glad that we can have these conversations, because then it means we can look deeper into what's happening and like I said, change the systems and make them favor everybody else.
So this year's annual Mandela Lecture will be delivered by the UN Secretary General under the theme Tackling the Inequality Pandemic, a new social contract for a new era. You famously, Zozi, said at a pageant last year, last year, that leadership is the most powerful thing we should be teaching young women today. So I'm trying with your help here to draw a line from the notion of this inequality pandemic we're talking about, be it among the races, be it among genders, and the role women must play in building back better, right? You hear people talk often at the UN about how we need to build back better after this pandemic. How do you see the role of women in all of that?
Women have always been there. And I feel like they will always be there. And so I definitely see their role and hoping that they will be very much included after the pandemic. I think one thing that this pandemic has shown us is such a huge gap in inequality, whether it be with gender and whether it be with race. And I think it's just one of the things that it revealed to us the most. And so, stepping out of the pandemic, I'm hoping those are the things that are going to be tackled, looking at the gap between, genders and the gap between race. And so I'm hoping we can do so much more for women, when we step out of the pandemic, just just to have, a more inclusive system in the world. And yeah, that's definitely where my thought is at the moment.
How have you been struck by the troubling surge in men attacking and abusing and even murdering women and girls around the world? And I purposefully don't refer to it as gender-based violence, because I think it dilutes the severity, the sometimes sheer brutality of what women and girls experience at the hands of men. What's your reading of the current situation, particularly in the context of COVID-19, Zozi?
I'm mad. I'm extremely infuriated by what's happening, because not only do women have to deal with, being scared of the pandemic and being scared for their health, now we also have to, worry about our lives. It's too much, for women all over the world. And it's the first thing that I said, when this pandemic started happening, my first thought was, women at home who are self-isolating and who are isolating with their partners, because, one of the first steps of abuse is men will generally isolate, women from their friends and from their family. And now it was automatically happening because of the pandemic. And so we knew that the numbers would shoot. And it's absolutely disappointing. It's absolutely disappointing. And, it just takes me back again to just plead with leaders, with our world leaders to, try and do something to favor women. I spoke about systems being built on racism, but they're also, built on patriarchy. They are not in favor of women. And I feel like we need to start, building policies that are so much favorable towards women and the protection of women. So I just feel like we can do so much better, and I hope that it's something we can definitely look towards too in the future. So definitely looking at policies, looking at laws that protect women so much more. I hope that that's something world leaders can do, not just in South Africa, but just the rest of the world.
And men really just have to get the message that it's hands off,
Absolutely.
It's a simple message.
It's a simple message.
We don't need a policy for that.
But you know what? The reason why I'm saying that as well is because I feel like we've been saying the same message to men, stop killing women, and it just doesn't seem to be going through. And I don't know what it is that women need to do at this point in order to keep their lives. And I guess it's conversation amongst men themselves. If you can't listen to women, then maybe, men can listen to themselves. And I just think, once again, building a much better future, men to start teaching young boys at a very young age how to be responsible, teaching them equality and teaching them consent. Because I think these young boys are people who are going to grow up to be, young men and leaders in society. So let's start now. Let's start with them as young as they are, so that they grow up to be the kind of man that we need in society today.
Well said. On that point, I want to talk a little bit about Universe United and how it has helped you really navigate this period and still feel as productive as you might have been traveling around the world. Speak to that, if you will.
Yes, it's been so unfortunate that I haven't been able to travel because, as people know, a big part of my job as in Miss Universe is traveling around the world, and I haven't been able to do that, but I'm somebody who's able to adjust to change very well, and as much as I was set back a little, I started a campaign, Universe United, which at first I started because I wanted to create a global virtual community to say to people, we're all scared of the pandemic. We all feel lonely, but we can have this community. But, it soon became, not only a fun platform, but an educational platform as well, because I've brought in people from different spheres of the world, from different career paths. And, I've had women from the United Nations, I've had lawyers, I've had doctors, I've had, such incredible people come to the platform to, not only to educate, but to sort of bring hope, to the people.
Everybody wants to be a part of your world, Zozibini.
Thank you. I'm honored. I'm honored.
Final question for you. We could have sort of touched on it in the previous question. This has not been the rain you expected, right? Enough said.
Not the rain that I expected, but I've always known, it was going to be a unique one. I just didn't know it would be this unique.
Zozibini Tunzi, thank you so much for speaking to us from one Eastern Caper to another Eastern Cape. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Lovely to speak to you once again.
As always, thank you. Zozibini Tunzi, Miss Universe 2019, in conversation with us ahead of Nelson Mandela International Day this Saturday, July 18th.